this thing. I mean, how stupid is Albanese that he's gone through the Voice thing. He's got egg on his face after the Voice because he got slapped down by the Australian public. Now he turns around and he's pushing another dog of a piece of legislation that nobody wants. It really, I don't know, I mean, it just makes me wonder what's really going on here. It's like these are obviously bad ideas, right? Being flogged to death by these people. Is there some other agenda? Is something else behind the scenes going on that we don't know about?
I mean, I think the name of the game is narrative control. When they lose with the Voice referendum, what they want to do is, well, how can we recover the narrative control that we've lost? And that's what authoritarians do: is they reach for the power lever, and the misinformation bill is an opportunity for them to control the narrative. Despite the fact that one of the groups that lies the most, most of the misinformation in a lot of cases comes from the government. But if you get to control what's information and what's misinformation, then you have the ability to control the narrative and direct policy the way you want it to go, even if it is not in the interests of the Australian public, which it's not.
It certainly seemed like it was the scapegoat after the Voice referendum. Shakeel, you've remarked, what is it about no, you don't understand? I thought you guys believe
I love that line.
Yeah. I wish we get a megaphone and go out to the front of the Prime Minister's house and just start screaming no until he gets it, that the answer's no. Yeah. Now, they're trying. Melinda Scott just did an interview with Sky News and Paul Murray, and she goes, it's really disappointing that they're not going to vote for it because of the millions and millions of people that get scammed on the internet. You know what? If that was your argument, you would have universal support. If the argument was that when you see, Twiggy Forrest, he's recommending some great investment, go put your money in, and you want that stuff taken down, fine. Debate that and that alone. But that's not what this bill is, and we can all see it for what it actually is. And where does
Who
it
was
end?
arguing that on
Linda Scott did it, and the Independent that was on Q&A on Monday. Linda Scott's the Labor something for Sydney Council, I think.
Right. And then the other woman was an independent.
Was an independent that was on Q&A the other day.
Oh, my God.
That's where they're trying to pivot this to.
Oh, my
But
God.
that's the thing. If you were trying to protect Australians from scams, that would be a different story. Then you would be talking about, okay, all these phone calls that people get. Can we do something to make sure the telecommunications companies require people to have licenses before they can mass call phone numbers? Those are the things that you could do if you were trying to deal with scams. We know that that's not what they're about, what they're after. And what they're after, somebody like myself, I trade the finance markets. What it means is that if somebody asks me, what do I think the future of Australian banking looks like? Do I think that the Australian banking sector is strong and is likely to have growth? What if I think that it's not? What if I think that there's some problems facing the industry? Now, those problems markets are cyclical. That might only be something that'll last for a year and then they recover. Who knows? But what it would effectively do, but if you actually read through that legislation, is it's not even about whether I'm saying something which is misinformation. It could be that I've released something that's gone viral where I have complained about the banking industry or any other industry for that matter. And then they say, well, that could destabilise the markets. So it's not even about misinformation. Where does it stop? And they talk about anti-bullying. If I come out here and say, oh, look, I'm the best-looking guy on this panel. Look at how gorgeous I am, right? And you guys say, no, you're not the best-looking.
It's misinformation.
Can I then say, well, that was bullying? You guys are bullying me, and so therefore I should have this taken down?
Well,
Where does it end?
authoritarianism is always rolled out under the guise of protection. Always.
Yeah.
That's the way it always works.
Yeah, we're here to keep. Well, look at 60 Minutes on the weekend. I mean, I didn't even watch the story, I got to admit, because I saw the promo and that was enough to make me want to throw up. But this whole idea that, okay, we're going to get this narrative of kids being bullied online, and that's tragic, and then you'll have the case of a kid that's tragically taken their own life, which is just unfathomable for parents to stomach. As one, it's the most horrible thing you could possibly imagine ever happening to you or your family. And then immediately the solution is to ban the internet. It's not the social media platforms that are the problem. It's not the media, the channels. It's the humans. If you want to fix these problems of bullying in our society, have a look at our culture. Have a look at the messages that we're sending kids today. Have a look at the loss of, religion or philosophy or a sense of depth in humanity and those sorts of issues. Go a bit deeper.
But not everything that could be considered bullying is necessarily bad.
Well, that too.
Right? If somebody makes, I grew up in the 80s, semi-rural Western Australia, people will often, less so now because we're more multicultural than what we were back then, but people would often say to me, especially when I moved to the East Coast, that I've got a reasonably strong Australian accent. I still don't think I do, but other people say that I do. I don't look like somebody who would ordinarily have an accent like that. That's not bullying me, right? So when my friends overseas and family members overseas that don't have an Australian accent, what are they going to do? They're going to make fun of me for having an Australian accent. My family that live in America, we make fun of them for having an American accent. Like, this is not bullying, but this is the oversensitivity that we're trying to teach our children to have. And parents, I don't think, want that.
And the opportunity for authoritarians
Absolutely.
to pass the laws that allow them the narrative control to get across their agenda, which is ultimately their goal.
Yeah. They're constantly talking about children, and in the past it was children and terrorism.
Yeah.
Now, look at, was it the Patriot Act?
Exactly.
In the United States?
Exactly. That massive document they pulled off the shelf within weeks of the event, as if they didn't have that ready to come off the shelf at the nearest. Don't let any crisis go to waste.
That's right. And they never give up the power once they've got it. They never say, look, actually, maybe we should roll some of this back. Oh, no,
never.
Government.
Never.
Mate, that commenter from Monday's show, I love that man, meaning you. They're back today. So I am keeping an eye on the comments, guys. Sorry, Damien, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say now it's little old ladies being scammed. It's like, what's the narrative? What's going to work? We've tried everything. It's kids being bullied. It's okay. But I mean, as I said on my show, last week, it's like trying to ban. It's the equivalent of trying to ban television in 1960. I mean, it's insane. It's like the technology's there, right? We're going to teach kids how to use the technology responsibly, manage their behavior in that technology. You don't take the technology away from them. You don't take it away from us as adults and reduce our ability to express ourselves. So both of these laws are just an absolute abomination. And I can't believe we're even talking about it.
A Trojan horse for other things.
Totally a Trojan horse.
In both cases, it's not about what they say it's about.
The little old ladies being scammed. This is one of the ones that I love, because yes, we need to do something to protect them. There's no question that we need to do something to protect our vulnerable people from things. However, that doesn't mean that when I go out on a Friday night and I try and take $5,000 out of the bank because I want to go play the pokies and be an idiot on Friday night, that I need my bank teller to say, what are you planning on doing with the money? I'm going to gamble it. I'm going to throw it away and be an idiot on Friday night. Oh, well, are you sure that that's not... Go away. It's okay. I'm 40 years old, right? You're not my mother. Leave me alone. I'm okay. And what are we seeing now? We're seeing this move where they wanted to try to get rid of cash. It's more difficult to access cash from ATMs. I know I'm sort of slightly changing the topic, but it's this over-control and overreach of government and big corporations.
Government should be transparent, and people should have privacy. Absolutely. What they're trying to do at every level is make sure that's the reverse. That they have complete view into everything the individual is doing and have secrecy at every level of government. It's a complete inversion of what they should be doing.
Did you see that study, Paul, that came out where they polled, I think it was Gen Zs, and they said, would you support having cameras inside your house that the government could access? And 30% of them said yes, right?
Insanity.
And most of them actually extended that to cameras inside their bedrooms.
Wow.
Like, to me, I thought that everybody was pretty pissed off when Edward Snowden started talking about how the American government had access to your dick pics. Now we've got a generation of people that are like, oh, actually, that's not so bad.
We've frightened them so much, they're crying for the authoritarianism. Without realizing what the actual cost is, what the actual agenda is. But, this is what we do when we traumatize a generation with the media that we have.
It's quite bizarre. Speaking of censorship, and this is a very strange reflex that they have. It's like when there's something you don't agree with, it's like a hammer in search of a nail. Just smash it, destroy it. Don't reason with it. Don't try and rebut it. Don't try and, have some kind of a Greek philosophical debate and pick it apart and, may the best idea win. It's like, no, it's intellectually lazy what they're doing. Now, one of the things we've covered on our show, and, obviously Damien Coory, you've interviewed Candace Owens when her visa situation, what was going on there. She's just hopped on this morning on Kiss FM with Kyle and Jackie O, and this is what she had to say about what's going on. And Kyle goes as far as saying, "Look, Australia's become a nanny state. Check this out."
Letting everyone know different points of view, different opinions, different takes on the world, and what rules we go through and what we have to live through, That is what society is all about.
When last we spoke to you, you were coming here for a speaker tour.
Yeah, the immigration minister got in the way.
The Anti-Defamation Commission, who pushed for Owens to be barred in Australia, said the decision was, quote, a victory for truth, for decency.
Like, I found out basically at the same time the press did because he was just so proud of himself.
Over time, she seems to have become increasingly disconnected from reality.
It is picking and choosing who they want in here and that is not the way this country is supposed to operate.
I want to shout out the Australians because they are not taking me being banned sitting down. They have started a petition.
The minister feared your speech may incite discord.
I've spoken in the UK, Israel, Hungary, Japan. I mean, I've been all over the place, and I've never sown discord.
It just makes me so happy to know that people are fighting for free speech. They're outraged.
Australia has done a social media ban for all children under 16 years of age. It will come into place next year.
That would never fly in America. It's like you have to allow people to parent their own children.
A national vaping ban. $1.5 million fine for a convenience store is what they want to give them if they sell vapes to anyone.
Kind of one of the reasons like why Trump won. I think if they had the authority to just monitor every aspect of your life, people are tired of it.
So the government doesn't want free speech and free thought listened to. The rules are starting to get a little bit much.
Look, thank you, Carl and Jackie. Guys, what were your thoughts on that? Because all three of you, you're very in fact, everyone here, except me probably, you're very internationally minded people. You've done a lot of travel outside of Australia. What the hell? What is this? This isn't the norm, and I think a lot of Aussies think it is the norm. This nanny state thing. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. It's sort of this, what do you call it? It's the Stockholm syndrome. And because everyone's here, because everyone's sort of grown up here and they're used to sort of the way the nanny state operates and that we police everything. I think, I'm reminded of that quote from Thomas Sowell. He says, if every time you see something wrong, you say there ought to be a law against that, you hold freedom in very low regard.
Well, that's my joke about the ABC, right? Just listen to any ABC news bulletin and you can say after every story, and the government should fix it.
Yeah.
The whole thing implies, and that's the cultural problem with the ABC. It's not an outward bias. It's this embedded cultural bias that sort of runs through absolutely everything that they report and say and do on their networks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, it's an international embarrassment, I think. I mean, I lived as an expat in Hong Kong for 16 years and other parts of Asia for a few years and came back in 2020. Felt like Rip Van Winkle. What the hell happened to my country? And that's sort of why I started the other side. But I think the idea that you're pointing to is right. People, I guess Australians love government, and that's the perception of Australians overseas, is that we are this big nanny state loving country. We love rules, we love authoritarians, and we like being ruled. How can that happen? It can only happen in a country where there's never been a truly despotic, dystopian, totalitarian government. Only people who have never seen or know what it's like to live under tyranny or to live under even just government oppression could think, as Australians do, that government's always such a great thing and that more government is only going to help, right? So we don't have that American thing of, I'm from Washington, I'm here to help, no, get the hell out of here. I want my state, to have its authority, and the Civil War history of America that sort of established that idea. We don't have, the Eastern European thing of we were under Soviet rule and we hate that. And we so you get immigrants here who just go, what is this country? It's like free, it's rich. It takes a lot to screw this up. And they're doing a fantastic job of it. And it isn't just the Labor Party and the unions, although it is a lot of them, and it's the Greens and the left. But, our so-called centre-right party is also just a gutless train wreck of big state-loving, whibs.
And I think, I don't want to hear from you in a sec, Shakeel, but just to paint a picture here, yeah, the Liberals, they are a problem. When the misinformation bill was sort of being pushed, especially after the Bishop Murray was stabbed back in April, Susan Ley, Peter Dutton, the party policy was basically, we support a misinformation bill. Susan Ley even went as far as to say, we will provide Labor the votes to pass a misinformation bill to combat this kind of thing with Elon Musk trying, not complying and keeping this video of this bishop being up. Peter Dutton didn't oppose that until after the bishop came out and said, no, I'm happy for the video to stay up. Okay, so that's your stance on the misinformation bill. What about the ban on under 16-year-olds with regards to what's going on there? And they support it. They're like, yep, no worries. We will bipartisan. We should pass it by the end of the year. David Coleman, he's the communications minister for the Liberals.
Shadow
communications minister for the Liberals. He's like, yep, absolutely. We will provide Labor the votes. We want to pass it before the end of the year and implement it as soon as possible. This is a critical emergency.
He went on Sky News and he sold the thing like he was the Minister for Communications. I mean, you could be forgiven for not calling him the Shadow Minister because he virtually got up there and, as I said last week, it's like with enemies like the Liberal Party, who needs friends?
Yeah.
Well, the Liberal Party may as well just close up ranks and say, look, we're just going to join the Labor Party. They're already described as two asses of the same arsehole.
Well, I actually think, I think they've been taken over and infiltrated by a left-wing element, faction that's taken the whole party over, and Conservatives can't even get in the door now.
I think it's the cowardice of Conservatives that they don't want to stand up and rock the boat, so they try to be all polite. I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is people like myself. Actually, I'll blame me. It's my fault. Because when I was younger, it used to really annoy me when I would see even one of my favourite Prime Ministers, John Howard, for the flaws that he had. I actually think he did a really good job overall in running this country. But you would look at how they would deal with things, and anytime they got any pushback, they'd try to step back a bit, and they'd try to be conservative or be a bit more liberal in their viewpoints. And the liberal part of the Liberal Party, and voters like me would say to them, you're not the Conservatives, you're the Liberal Party. Now I'm sitting there saying, actually, can you move a bit further to the right? Because you've come back too much to the centre and you're being too accommodating to ideas that we do not support.
The word conservative means conserve your values, right? And it's in the name. It's in the name of the Liberal Party. Those liberal values should be conserved because that's what makes you previously a valuable party. Now, unfortunately, a lot of parties are full of, I call it the 5 C's, the cowards, the careerists, the corrupt, and some courageous. Oh, and the clueless, right?
I can think of a few other C words.
Yeah. There are courageous people in the Liberal Party, but they are not the people pushing forward the agenda. There are so many people who are willing either to sell out their values or they're clueless. And Australia is heading right towards the iceberg. With the net zero agenda is a disaster. It's a disaster for businesses. It's a disaster for families. It's a disaster for our national security. And we do not have a major party who is trying to be a bulwark against this. And the classical liberal, Enlightenment values, this is what made Western civilization great. Yeah. And we are not embracing and conserving those values. And not even the Liberal Party. Your name is right there, liberal. What are you doing?
Can I just say something? Because I'll just come back a little bit on something that you said there. I don't actually think that Australians in general love government. I don't think they do. I think there's a lot of apathy. I think that's the real problem. I mean, we're a country, not my ethnicity, but we're a country founded, on petty criminals that were forced over here. We're a country of rebellious people, and we can go through the Eureka Stockade, which is not taught at school, and all the different things that have happened throughout Australian history. If you have a look at the Labor Party, I don't know why they think they have a mandate. What do they get? 30% of the vote? Okay. You have a look at the UK, the Labor Party over there. Actually, if you have a look at how people voted, although, yes, the Labor Party won in the UK, if you have a look at how they voted, I could make a pretty strong argument that the country actually moved to the right. It's just because of the quirks of their electoral system that produced the Labor Party victory. Mm-hmm. So it's not as though the majority of people are actually supporting these kinds of ideas. And as you've pointed out, Joel, quite a few times, when people are asked directly with things like The Voice, they oppose it.
Yep.
If you go back in, ancient history now, when Senator Conroy wanted to bring out the metadata retention laws, when people were polled, the overwhelming majority of Australians didn't want that. They passed it anyway because they had the numbers. So I don't actually think that the everyday Australian does want more government. And what's been really surprising, especially since I've been on your podcast, is I've had friends of mine who I've never really talked politics with because they're, in my mind, very on the left. One of them actually lives in inner city Melbourne. And sending me messages saying, hey, another one that lives in Perth, saying, hey, can you get one of the Make Australia Great Again hats? And I'm like, huh? You're a lefty. Yeah. Like, yeah, but we don't agree with government either. And that's what we've seen, is that the people that are on the left, when you actually sit down and talk with them, outside of perhaps some of the diehard Green supporters and the diehard Labor supporters, they'll actually sit there and say, look, we want clean energy. We don't want, a failing electricity grid.
Yep.
We want healthcare to be funded. We're not saying that we want government to dictate everything that we eat and drink and etc. So if you actually look, I think the left and the right are a lot more similar, and that's where you get that crossover between the Bernie bros who moved across to Donald Trump.
Definitely. So
the US, I think, is and what we're seeing in the US is actually an indicator, in my eyes, as to the general feeling of the populace in the Western countries. The Five Eyes countries are the most alike. But even if you have a look through Europe, look at how the German media is losing their mind over a political party that's on the right. They're not extremists. Look at what happened in France, the gaming of the political system in the last elections in France. You're seeing Sweden. Is Sweden a right-wing country? What are they upset about in Sweden? They're upset about immigration.
Yep.
They're upset about overreach a little bit of government, not their own, but the European Union government. So we're seeing that around the world. I actually don't think that people will like this. I think they're just forced to put up with it.
I don't agree. I